Hey-ho, let's go. And a happy college football Tuesday to everyone. Hope you're well wherever you are. I am Sean Pugsley Martin. This is episode 111 of Pugsley's Pit. Been a little while since we've been here, but excited to be back today. But before we do anything, we begin the show by asking you the question, where else would you rather be than right here? Booyah! Right now, Husker Red, going bowling. On today's show, the college football playoffs with a friend of the program, the Goz, Tom Goslowski, coming in just a moment. But by way of introduction, I'm a freelance sports writer for the Albany Times Union, avid sports enthusiast, big-time homer for my teams without apologies, bit of a coffee junkie as well. You can follow the show on Twitter at Pugsley's Pit and at Sean_Martin77, taking the podcast on YouTube at our channel at Pugsley927. With that, it's the brackets are out. The talk is over. Bama, get over it. And with that, maybe he'll share the same sentiment as I do. Let's bring in, back with the program, Tom Goslowski. I now call him Goz The Visionary, and you're going to find out why very soon. You can catch Goz on the Levac and Goz show here in the 518 on 95.9 and 980 from 4 to 7 p.m. My friend, how are you?
I'm doing well. Life is good. I had hair last time I was on the show. I no longer have that. A lot has changed, it feels like. I was a father of 2, now a father of 3. So a lot has changed since we last spoke, but all good things in my life for sure.
That's awesome. Look, well, we had you on in the preseason. Syracuse, we were jacked for the orange for you. Kyle McCord, what a year for him. I want to talk about him in a little while when we get to the tears that are still flowing out of Columbus, Ohio. What are your thoughts on Syracuse for this year? Fran Brown acquitted himself, I thought, very, very well.
I think if we go back to the preseason tape, I believe it was 8. I think I put him at 8-4 on the season. If anything was above 8, it would have been an absolutely successful season. Even 8 successful for the Orange. They get to 9. I don't know if I would have thought they could have beaten Miami, but sure enough, the final game of the regular season, they take down the Hurricanes. They cost Miami a shot at the ACC title game and the college football playoff. One of the 3 losses. You could look back and say if it's not a short week, even though it came off a bye against Pitt, maybe it's different. Stanford's inexcusable, Boston College, but the combination of who they lost to, how and when, unpredictable. Fran Brown, first-year head coach, first time ever doing it at any levels head coach. That's about as great as you can get for the Orange. Should be thrilled and going to a classic bowl game in the Holiday Bowl, which has been around forever. So great season for the Syracuse Orange.
That's awesome. My Huskers started off 5-1. I had to sweat it out, but we set a bare minimum this year, get Dylan Raiola acclimated, make a bowl game. We did. I'm going to be in New York City the 27th of December, not the 28th, which really kind of sucks. It's a tough sell to Mrs. Pugsley to have me go back down the next day, one day before her birthday, and so I'm going to watch it on TV. But we're in a bowl game. That's all that matters. Let's get to the big bowl games, though. Right. Let's get to the playoffs. I got the seeds down on the scroller, the first round games. Oh, wait, before we get to the bowl games, let's get to the other big news going on. And other than the newborn, we now call you are forever going to be known on this show as Goz The Visionary. And I'm going to leave that to you to tell everybody why. The video, if you haven't seen it on Twitter, go see it. It's legendary. Take it away.
All right. So for those who may not been following the journey for my pro wrestling fans, very much like Cody Rhodes, I compared myself to. I had to finish the story. I had a 7-leg parlay in the preseason of these 7 teams making the college football playoff. I took the 4 heavy favorites, which were Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, and Texas. So 4 heavy favorites. I looked at Notre Dame's schedule and said they're going to get, if they get to 11-1, they're going to get in. So I tossed Notre Dame in there as well. Then I said, okay, a group of 5 teams going to get in. Boise State had the number 1 running back prospect for the NFL draft. They had a 5-star who didn't even play in Malachi Nelson. Who's going to beat Boise besides Oregon? So I threw Boise in there. And then there was one other team I put in there. I looked at all the schedules and said, this SMU team is going to be poised to get in the college football playoff. I'm not going to take them to make the ACC championship, win the ACC championship, because they might have a good enough record. So give me SMU as my 7th team at 11-1 on the parlay. And boy, did I sweat it out from championship Saturday night, hedging the bet a little bit, not as much as I probably should have, maybe more now looking hindsight 2020. So there I sat from the moment that kick goes in, the 17-point comeback from Clemson hitting a 55-plus yarder, the first time in a conference championship game ever, to about 12:30 the next day, trying to do all the math possible. But there you saw the celebration of me hitting that 7-leg parlay. It was a party at the Goz house, as that video shows, when that payout hit the bank account a few hours later.
I'm just the SMU pick that's legendary stuff. I don't know where that came from. The conference isn't great, but you got some other guys. Miami, for example, or in the ACC. Let's talk about the SMU. Now that kick goes through, and my first thought is, well, SMU was out. I'm like, well, wait a minute. The committee, the CFP committee, they were going to get skewered no matter what they did. They set themselves up the week before when they had SMU ranked ahead of all the other teams from the Power Four, or the other Power Four, Alabama and everybody. And could you imagine the backlash if they had dropped SMU out of it? Because now you're penalizing them for making their conference championship game. They had to keep it going that way.
Yeah, and this is the amazing part, that we actually make sure we explain to college football fans and sports fans, because I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 21, but there's a scene in the movie 21, and even though he's a creep, Kevin Spacey's in the film, and there's a great scene they call it the Monty Hall problem. And he talks to one of the students and says, you're on a game show. Long story short, he talks about a game show, and you pick a door. You pick door 3, and they ask you, do you want to stick with door 3, or do you want to change it? And he says, of course I want to change it. He's like, what do you mean, of course? And he explains how scenarios and variables and numbers all change. So you're not asking for the same scenario. So that's what we all have to remember. In the past, you had the mythical national champion. In the past, we had the BCS and computers and 2 teams playing, then 4, now 12. So we can't even go back last year and say, well, Florida State got screwed because of Jordan. We're past it. We can't even do the comparison of the past of the 4 or the 2, because everything has changed. But when it comes to the 12, Alabama's 3 losses, 2 were to teams who were 6-6. Now, if Alabama had 2 losses and SMU had 2 losses, I think it's a whole different conversation. But they didn't. They had 3. SMU played in the conference championship game. They barely lost. And I think the committee looked at this and said, okay, for the future of the sport, if SMU is out of this, they're all gone. All the conference championships are done forever. Because what happened in the past, now I know I'm doing it, but what a lot of times they did is said, okay, TCU and Baylor, I think in 2014, teams leapfrogged them because they got an extra win. Okay, we can run through it. Like Florida State won, but Alabama benefited because they beat Georgia. We saw teams use it as a way to bump themselves up rather than knock themselves out. But in the 12-team playoff, SMU lost to a Clemson and BYU team in the top 20. Oklahoma and Vandy aren't those teams for Alabama. So that was the difference. SMU had 1 less loss, 2 very close losses by less than 10 points, and that's what the committee decided on at the end. That was the difference.
Yeah, the biggest thing for Alabama was they went to Oklahoma late in the year on a Saturday night, national TV, 8 o'clock, and that's not their fault that all their games are on national TV, but that's what happened. And they didn't just lose the game. They got taken to the house by an average Oklahoma team. They didn't even score a touchdown in that game. That's going to resonate late in the year. And the other thing is I get a kick out of their AD coming out and saying they're going to reevaluate some of their non-conference scheduling. Let's see. Western Kentucky, South Florida, Wisconsin. Not their fault. Wisconsin sucked, but Mercer. I don't even need my glasses. What are you gonna read? What do you have to reassess? What, Albany? The Siena, Hudson Valley, can they field a team here? They didn't break a sweat in non-conference games.
No, and if we go back in the history of Alabama, and Alabama fans have to admit this, they've always had a soft non-conference. I know Miami was on the schedule a bunch for the Kickoff Classic, and they had that. The SEC is tough enough. The SEC stuff, like the math of this should have been understood by the SEC and the Big Ten, that this is how it goes. You're not going to have everybody go 11-1 and 12-0. Somebody's got to be 6-6. Somebody's got to be 7-5. My dad was telling me, shout out to Goz Sr., who's been saying this since the conference expansion. He's like, how do people not understand the math on this? And it must be more arrogance than anything else that everybody from LSU to A&M to Bama all thinks they're going to be the team that's 10-2, 11-1, and 12-0. Nobody wants to admit that somebody's going to go 5-7 in the SEC all the time.
Yep. So what's your global view of the bracket? We'll get into predictions a little later. The one thing that's already irritating me is all the guys saying, well, Oregon got screwed because they're the only unbeaten. They have the toughest path. Look, the rules were that to get a bye, you have to win your conference championship, okay? That's the rule. You don't like it, change it down the road, but don't sit here and whine about Oregon's draw. You're in the playoff. And this is what they love. They want controversy because we're talking about it. There's going to be controversy whether it's a 12-team tournament, who's number 13. Last year it's 4, and Florida State was 5. They got hosed. What's your overall view of the bracket? One, do you like the bye weeks for Boise and Arizona State?
I do like the bye weeks. It feels as if those teams, under these certain circumstances of rules, are the teams who should be in that spot. If I got to rule the world and change college football's bracket and mix it up a little bit, here's the benefit that I would have to teams who win the regular season. So what I would do is I'd say, okay, I don't mind the conference championship game deciding the automatic bid. I actually think that's a pretty cool idea, and it makes it meaningful for those teams.
Yep.
But for the major Power 4 conferences, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, SEC, I would say, okay, there's no more divisions anymore. Whoever is your regular season champion, 12 games, not one game. And I know, again, the best 2 teams usually will play in the conference title game, but whoever wins the regular season goes. Done. You will be rewarded for being the best team in your conference. Done. So there's your auto bid right there. And if that team plays, a team who's like the Big 12, a bunch of teams are tied at the top. Okay, Arizona State, Iowa State, you want to play yourself in? Here you go. Here's your game. Now someone say, well, guys, what's the benefit of the regular season champion even playing in that game? Now it's seeding. Okay, let's see what you can do. If the Big 10 team thinks they're better than the SEC team, let's go out and see if you can win. Are you going to be 1? Are you going to be 2? Are you going to be 3? So I like this seeding. I really have no issues with anybody where they are because they all had opportunities to improve their resume in the season.
Yeah,
some teams lost late. That'd be my only change over the future. I know people want to go to 16 and 24. I would say let's reward the regular season conference champions. And I believe all 4 would have gotten in. I think it's because SMU was undefeated in conference play. Arizona State. Yeah, all 4 would have gotten in. So that's my only thing. Like, let's never leave a regular season conference champion outside of the playoff. Like, it almost happened with SMU.
Almost. I'll tell you what, go back to your bet for a second. I was really nervous. When they showed Clemson at 12, I was like, SMU's out because why would you have Clemson ranked higher than SMU? They just beat them last night. But again, the committee, they must have, I don't know if they wanted drama or suspense on the show, but that's the 11. I don't know. But maybe they just rewarded SMU for that top seed in the ACC and said Clemson got in on a kick. We'll put them at 12. That had to have been what it was. Were you sweating that out when you saw that?
Oh my gosh, was I sweating it out. Like, there's a video. My wife is not too far away from me, but she kind of understood how the bracket would be revealed, but she thought they'd hit, right out of the gates and do it. There was a commercial break. And then when they went to 12, I'm like, it's over. Like, they're done because, like, your rationale totally makes sense. Why wouldn't they have him there at 12? And then, if you remember, they showed Penn State at 6, and then they jumped to 7. Now, if you know the NCAA tournament for men's basketball, what they always do is they show the pod, right? They go like 8 versus 9, 6 versus 11. So then they jumped, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Can you just show it all? So credit to ESPN. They stretched out. Credit to them. They got their commercials in. But I waited to that last. And they threw a graphic in there, Pugsley. They put the Bama SMU graphic up to show that Alabama should be in. I'm like, I'm done. I'm toast. And sure enough, SMU got in.
A couple other storylines. I'm going to go first on this. To me, this is that first game. Not only is Tennessee, what I think a very underrated football team, it's Ohio State against themselves almost. And college is tough. These aren't pro athletes. They're adults, but they're still college kids. To ask Ohio State now to have that just bitter taste of that 20-point favorite loss at home to Michigan, the brawl after the game where they showed more fight in that 5 minutes than they did for 60. Now they got to resonate with this for a month. And Herb Street said during the broadcast on Thursday, they would have been better off going on the road because they think there's going to be a lot of orange in there, people coming up north for that game. You talk about pressure on Ryan. The most first-round pressure is Ryan Day. I think Ohio State's going to lose that game to Tennessee. I don't think they're going to be able to get over the emotion loss and the lingering residue from Michigan to get it up to beat a team like Tennessee.
I am with you on your take. Tennessee has been fantastic this entire season. If it's a different world, Tennessee is talking about potentially playing in an SEC title game. Maybe they're the representative out of the SEC East. And I know the Georgia mix is in there, but Tennessee is a team that's been good all season long. And here's the thing with Ohio State, and I know Buckeye fan doesn't want to think of it like this, but there's really a connection here between Ohio State and Texas A&M from like 3 to 4 years ago. And what I mean by that is that, remember, the A&M class under Jimbo Fisher a few seasons ago was called the greatest recruiting class of all time. Like, this was the first class with NIL, and almost every kid is gone. They all got their money. They all left. Ohio State has become that. I'm sure like somebody like with a psychology degree needs to help me out with this and figure out exactly what the impact is with a 18 or 19-year-old getting a ton of money and still being motivated. But that's when I look at this Ohio State team. The pressure's through the roof. As you mentioned, you lost to your rival Michigan. You barely lost to Oregon. Now you play a Tennessee team where the emotion's there, the money's there, and I don't even know if they like Ryan Day. I think about the Harbaugh quote all the time where he said, this guy was born on third base and thought he had a triple. There is a lot to say about Ryan Day where I know he was a coordinator, but he didn't work his way up. He was handed the Ohio State kick, and I got nothing that says, good thing you got Ryan Day in a big game because he just hasn't proved it yet. So I'm with you. This game feels like Tennessee, and if Tennessee gets up 7-0 or 10-0, they're going to destroy them. Like, they're going to run them off the field if they get up early in that game.
Yeah, I liken it back to in 2001, the Huskers were number 1 all year, and they went to Colorado and did not tackle. They didn't have one good defensive assignment, and they got destroyed. Like 60 something to 40 something. They made the national title game, but the mystique was gone. The aura was gone. They didn't recover from that. And one of the best college teams of all time, Miami, beat us up pretty good in the Rose Bowl. Similar to this, I don't know. I don't think Ohio State, they have such a mental block against Michigan. How are they going to, now they got to sit around for a month and get up there. I think Ohio State, they're going to lose. And quite frankly, I'm going to enjoy the tears flowing out of Columbus and on Twitter. And Ryan Day, they're going to be calling for his job as soon as they lose the opening coin toss. They're going to be calling for his job there.
I know this is your show, but I'm so tempted. I'm going to ask you a question on your own show.
Go ahead.
Do you think that would be Ryan Day's last game as the head coach of the Buckeyes if they lose?
I do because you got to remember, they're the best team money can buy.
That's right.
We talked about it in the preseason. They had more pressure than anybody else because everybody knew the size of the checks being written. They're the $20 million team. I've heard 30, but 20 we'll go with. They have to. Those are unfair expectations, but guess what? That's what you signed up for. So that's the way it goes. Yeah, I think he's out. I think they want him out if he doesn't deliver. And he may have to, I don't know if winning a national title will, anything short of that will cost him his job. But a first-round loss in Tennessee, if you got a lot of orange in that crowd, that's not going to look good.
I'm with you. I think that's the last job he will have. The last game he'll have is the head coach at Ohio State. Totally. They'll find somebody else, whether it's Urban Meyer. They'll beg him to come back. They'll Signetti from Indiana. They'll lure him away. That will be the last Ryan Day head coaching gig at Ohio State. He'll be done. So, yeah, we're both feeling the same way about that match with the Vols and the Buckeyes.
What Carson Beck, we talked about it before we went on. I thought he was a great NFL talent. I didn't care for his turnovers this year. One of the reasons I like Georgia in this tournament is every time they get pushed this year, they always respond. Even when Alabama was blowing them out early in that game, they came back. They hung in there again. They've beaten Texas twice now. I don't know if they can win it without Carson Beck. What are your thoughts there? That looked bad, and it hurts a UCL injury, and thankfully they have the bye week. What are your thoughts on Georgia with or without Beck?
Beck has been so hyped since September. Like, he's the number 1 pick in the draft. If you don't like Shedeur Sanders, if you don't like Cam Ward, here's your guy. He's got all the tools. He's got all the intangibles. I can already hear Mel Kiper and Todd McShay talking about all the physical tools he has, and he does. And he's got, like, the Instagram D1 girlfriend. He's dating one of the Cavender twins, who's a social media influencer. I'm talking about NIL, the Cavender. So, also, I don't know if you've said this or other people have said this to me before, but people love the line of, thank goodness they didn't have social media when I was in college.
Oh, yeah.
Because poor Carson Beck, he's trying to still flirt with girls on Snapchat and everyone's posting his bad pickup lines. That kid's making a ton of money, dating models, he's the big man on campus who looks like he doesn't care about anything else. Like, I would love to figure out what's in the mind of Carson Beck because it feels far more mental than physical with him. And again, you mentioned the injury. I don't think they can win with him or without him. I know Gunnar Stockton, the kid who came in for him in the SEC title game, he took that monster hit near the goal line.
Not a slide.
That's exactly right. Like, this is not Georgia high school football anymore where he's a legend. It was a big-time recruit coming in.
Yeah.
Look, Georgia's going to have depth. That's one of the biggest strengths about this team. I know we talked about that in August where this would be the key in the college football playoff, but I fear what Georgia can do on offense. We know the defense is good, but can they flat out beat teams 21-17? If they draw Notre Dame in that quarterfinal matchup, can Riley Leonard just outplay who's ever under center for Georgia? I believe he can. I believe Notre Dame can outscore Georgia. And as simple as a take as that is, if Notre Dame gets there, I'm curious if even Notre Dame might be favored because of the quarterback question if we see the Fighting Irish and Bulldogs in that matchup.
I want to get one other team in here because I'll piggyback to Notre Dame. Back in August, yours truly, not very astutely predicted Oregon would miss the playoffs, saying that they would struggle in the new conference. The grind of the Big Ten would wear them down. It did not. They're the only unbeaten team there. I think Oregon is I don't want to say the worst number one team I've ever seen, but to me, I just don't buy it yet. They struggled a little early. They got it going. They won all their games, but they can get picked off anywhere. I don't think they're as strong as what we're used to seeing from the team that's consensus number one in the country. Am I nuts?
This would be a beer bet or a nice wing bet for you and I about how far we think the Ducks will go. This was my pick in August to win it all. Okay. I thought with Dan Lanning and Dylan Gabriel coming in the portal, this would be the team who would win it all. Have they had moments where they almost got beat? Sure. Like Ohio State had their chances. Yep. Boise State had their chance. I know that feels like both those games feel like forever ago now, which is great because the college football season goes a lot longer now, which is wonderful. Yeah. But Oregon's draw. So if they get, I believe they get Texas in that 5-12 or somewhere around there, like Arizona State's in that mix too.
Well, they're going to deal with the Tennessee Ohio State winner. That's why people are won.
Thank you. 8-9, and they already played Ohio State. That's right. So I'm already jumping ahead on my bracket. So I think if they draw the 8-9, if they get Tennessee, they can beat Tennessee. Their defense can hang with them. They've won every game this season. Dan Lanning's a fantastic coach. And a lot of people still think Oregon, they think speed and the blur offense with Chip Kelly. They've got everything. Like they got the quarterback. They got strong offensive line, strong defensive line, speed. The question is, will this break for them, the bye week benefit them or not? Are they already thinking about, like I just did, jumping ahead to the next round? I like Oregon a lot. And if it's not this year, it's next year. I love the storyline. I know I brought NIL a ton, but all this factors in this year. Like the rumors that Phil Knight from Nike will do everything possible to see a champion before he dies for his alma mater is too funny of a storyline. So I like the Ducks a lot here. I know people are crushing their draw, but they're undefeated at number one. Nobody's beat them yet. So I'll roll with the best team, especially when they're the third favorite on the board at like 4-1.
The reason I say piggyback to Notre Dame is in years past when they've made the playoff, it's been painful to watch them in the semifinals because they get there and they're just outclassed. I don't see that super team this year to where you could say Notre Dame is outclassed because I think Notre Dame can hang with a Georgia team with or without Beck. I'm looking at the bracket. I'll tell you what, let's go to the first round before we get into the real picks. Is there an upset special there? For me, I've already said Tennessee. I think they're getting 6.5, which is just insanity. Is there a team out there lurking in the bushes that, because the lines on these are not close. I think they're all over a touchdown or right at a touchdown.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Remember when you had the semifinals, they used to be 3 touchdown on average victory when we had that stretch there for the semi. So sometimes there is that difference in actual talent. Tennessee, and that's about it. Like I could see Indiana getting smoked. I could see Clemson off the emotional win getting smoked. And SMU getting it, that feels like a success enough. Penn State fans have been willing to prove people wrong. I don't even know if any game's going to be close besides Ohio State and Tennessee. I see the favorites rolling in that opening round.
Yeah, so do I. Other than the Tennessee, the one team that is on the spot. Let's go to the rest of the bracket. I tried to get a graphic up, but I couldn't make it fit. It was making me condense it. I'll tell you the team, everyone said, well, Oregon got screwed with their draw because they're going to have Ohio State, Tennessee in round 2. Penn State got the easiest road. No, they didn't, because I know Boise State didn't have the grind of an SEC or Big Ten schedule throughout the course of the year, and that matters. Their one loss is a 3-point loss at Oregon. And just because Boise State doesn't play in a Power 4 doesn't mean they're not one of the best teams in the country. It just means they didn't have as tough a conference to negotiate. With that running game, with Genty, they're no layup against Penn State. I like Boise State in that game, and the other reason is Penn State is notorious. They win the games they're supposed to, and then when they get to the moment, they lose. And I don't think they're going to get by Boise State.
I love that. You and I are feeling a lot. Besides the Oregon pick, we're feeling very similar about that, because to add to that, right? So Penn State's going to come off a Big Ten game for the championship against Oregon and Indiana. Then they're going to travel to Happy Valley to take on SMU. Then I believe that game's in Tempe, Arizona, or Glendale, Arizona. It's the Fiesta Bowl. So you're going to play 3 top 15, top 10 teams in a month, and you're going to play them in Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. That is going to have an effect on Penn State. So I'm with you. I think Boise State is going to get to the Final Four. I believe Boise State, because of the bye and the semifinals and everything else. I like the Broncos as well to advance the semis.
Yeah, I like Boise State to get there. I'm going to say the winner of Notre Dame and Georgia. If Beck plays, I'll take Georgia to win it all. If Beck does not play, I think I got Notre Dame going to the championship game. Notre Dame over Boise in the semis. The top part is tough. I mean, Texas, up until 4 days ago, I thought this was Texas's year, and that pains me because I hate the Longhorns. I hate them. Loved watching them lose again. I think they're going to beat Clemson. I think it's going to be close, but I'll beat them. They'll beat them. Arizona State looked really good the other day, but I like Texas there. I'm going Tennessee into the finals. Give me the Vols. I'm riding them. I think they're one of the best, the most, like I said earlier, one of the most underrated teams in the country. I'm going to say Tennessee, Georgia. Georgia wins it. If Beck is out, I hate hedging my head. It sounds stupid when I do this, but we don't know if he's playing or not. If not, I'll put Notre Dame in the final with Tennessee cutting down the nets at the end of the year.
So you've got either Tennessee or Georgia, depending on when you're listening to this edition of Pugsley's Pit. If Beck's in, it's Georgia. If not, Tennessee.
Over Notre Dame.
Okay. So mine's not too far off from yours. It looks like we are both going to have the winner of that Tennessee-Oregon game in the national championship, because I have Oregon versus Notre Dame, and I have the Ducks getting it done, having one of the great seasons in college football history. I believe that'd be the most wins by any football team ever in the history of FBS because of the expanded playoff and everything else. So I've got Oregon getting the thing done and beating Notre Dame. And if you're a Notre Dame fan, so you lost to Alabama, you lost in the semis, you get to the championship. Notre Dame fan, I know you don't want to be thrilled losing the championship, but I grew up when Notre Dame wasn't very good. Gosh, that program has changed now from Brian Kelly to Marcus Freeman and everything else. So Fighting Irish fans, even though you drew the 7, that's still a really nice draw because of injuries and everywhere else you sit on the bracket.
Yeah, talk about Dan Lanning for a second. What does Oregon do to keep rotating in all these great coaches, going back to Mike Bellotti and everybody else, and Chip Kelly, and now they get Dan Lanning? I mean, whatever their coaching factory is, somebody needs to replicate it, because they keep bringing in all these guys and they just don't have any slippage. They keep getting better.
They get everything. They get the recruits, they get the jerseys, they get the facilities, everything. They invested in their program. They put all the money in and said, we want to be good at football. And then the coaches realized that. And Lanning, I'll stick by my take about Lanning, that you're going to say he's got the best job of any coach in any sport, pro or college. Like, that might be the best gig in sports as a coach.
I've heard him mention in the NFL, same with Marcus Freeman and the Bears. I'll tell you, I know that's the ultimate challenge for college guys. I'd like to get into the big league and all that stuff, but you're right. You talk about being in paradise. Eugene, Oregon's the hot spot for college, because you're right. You have everything there.
You got a big-time alumni with deep pockets. You've got a really good team. Like, if you ask Chip Kelly and Mario Cristobal, do they regret leaving? I bet they'd both say yes. I know Cristobal is a little different because of the Miami thing, but I'm willing to say both feel like they should not have gone and left that gig at Oregon.
Yeah. All right, let's go. You got to vote. I'm not going to ask you who you're voting for. You're heading down to the city this weekend, right?
Yes, I will be in New York City. I will be at the Marriott Marquis on 42nd Street for the 9th time the last 10 years, the 10th year representing the Capital Region as a Heisman Trophy voter. And just for those who won't give you grief of why you're not going to ask me, I have to sign every single document you could imagine that I'm not allowed to share who I voted for until this television special ends. It was, what is it, Rumpelstiltskin that asked for the firstborn child? That's what it feels like the Heisman does for me. So, yes, I can't share my vote. I gave this take earlier this year about this. If they tell me I'm done after year 10, I am very much at peace with that. Allegedly, like it's a lifetime vote. But as you know this is a sports writer. Like a lot of this stuff gets circled in and out. Like the AP votes for the top 25, the Baseball Hall of Fame, you got to cover for 10 to 15 years. Usually this stuff gets circled out. So if they tell me, hey, you're done after 10, that's fine. I wish these votes would be public at the end. I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know why this is the one award in sports that we don't know who votes for who and where the vote came from. But nonetheless, here's my take on the Heisman. I would say this group of 4, which now post-COVID, they've made 4 finalists. That's what it is now. That's it used to be 3, used to be 5. They changed that after COVID. That it is like no other finalist class I have ever covered, because you've got the number 1 player on the number 1 team in the country. You've got a guy from a non-power 4. You've got a two-way player. You've got another transfer quarterback who started his career at Incarnate Word. You got some great stories, but really this finalist class is like no other class that I've covered the last 10 years.
I think for me, I love Genty at Boise State. Right. And I think he's going to be a top 15 pick in the draft. You see him linked with Dallas. He's going to benefit from the NFL with their bizarre logic of devaluing the running back position, and guys like Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs blowing that theory out this year. But Travis Hunter doesn't leave the field. I mean, he doesn't leave the field. He's an elite corner. He could be an elite wide receiver. I think whoever drafts him is going to have to get creative, because you can't play both ways every snap in the NFL. You just wear yourself out. The one thing with Travis Hunter, and no one ever talks about that, he laid a tackle against Nebraska that was just legendary, and it led to a big touchdown for the Huskers in that win. But yeah, for me, it's the Oregon kid, or not the Oregon, the Colorado kid. Just again, he didn't leave the field. But we haven't seen anything like this. Charles Woodson was the closest, but he didn't play near the offense that Travis Hunter has.
I'll give 2 interesting behind the scenes inside baseball. Nobody aggregate me, because I'd like to still keep my vote next year. But here are 2 things that I do know as a Heisman voter that may or may not influence voters that have happened this year.
Okay.
One of these is that they always remind everybody. So you get your ballot the week before the conference championship game. So your ballot gets mailed in on Monday. The conference championship game is that weekend. You have 2 weeks basically to decide who you're going to vote for. Traditionally, what they would do is they would email you that Sunday after the conference championship games were played and say, hey, don't forget to get your ballot in. This year, they emailed everybody on Friday, which is 3 hours before Genty played. So how many voters freaked out and were like, whoa, I didn't get my vote? I've done it for 10 years. That's the first time in 10 years they offered that email on a Friday rather than a Sunday. Did that influence voters? I'm curious to see on Saturday. The second thing is, when I got my ballot, it's looked the same the last 9 years. This year, it usually says player name, school, position. That's what it always says. This year, it just said name and school. So did they know that Travis Hunter was going to be a candidate, and they didn't want to influence people over like wide receiver, defensive back, athlete? Maybe a small thing, but you'd wonder like, they've never done that. Those are 2 things that have never happened before. Look, COVID, like they changed a bunch of stuff. Just some insight to wonder if you're wondering what's been different this year than any other year from the media side. Those are just 2 interesting tidbits that have happened over the last week.
All right. Well, look, thank you very much for hopping in this week. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, but also talk some college football, and enjoy your day, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you letting me back on. We will be talking about that Oregon bet, by the way. I will hold you to that, how far the Ducks go. You and I both like to consume adult beverages and food. So that might be our first Pugsley's Pit wager of how far the Ducks can go here.
We can do that. Not a problem. Let's get that squared away.
Take care, my friend. We'll talk again soon. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Enjoy your family time.
See ya.
All right. Happy holidays, buddy. The Goz The Visionary. All right. Hey, let's go to the My World segment. Okay. So, yeah, 2-11. We've lost 9 in a row. A lot of talk with the Raiders in the draft and everything. Yeah, we need a quarterback. I mean, going into the year with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, I still like Aiden O'Connell. He may come back next week. But I said it last year. He's just not a top-tier starting quarterback caliber player. So the Raiders are looking at the draft. You see Shedeur Sanders, you see Cam Ward out there. Sanders has made no bones about his wanting to go to Vegas, and from what you hear, the Raiders want him too. Man, I guess I'd have to live with it. I don't know how that would work. My preferred method would be if you have the first pick or the second pick, is see if you can go out and sign a free agent quarterback or trade for somebody, a veteran, and then go bring in Travis Hunter and find a way to make him work. If you go get a free agent, I know you're kicking the can down the Sam Darnold, whoever. I don't want Kirk Cousins, though. He sucks. Is this Sam Darnold a franchise quarterback in the NFL? No, he's not. Is he a good enough placeholder for a year or two until somebody else is there? I don't want the Raiders to take a quarterback at 1 or 2 that shouldn't be taken. I don't want them to take one because they think he's going to be a quarterback, be a stud quarterback. You got to know. You got to get it right. See Jamarcus Russell back in the late 2000s. They took him. Somebody said he was the best quarterback in the draft. He was terrible. He was a bust. As far as Antonio Pierce, he has not had a good year. I don't know if it was him or Tom Kolesko that hired Luke Getsy as the OC, but someone's got to earn that. I would hate to see the Raiders fire a coach just because they wanted to fire a coach, because you have to have some stability. And whether it's one more year to turn around, maybe we should have expected a tough year this year with the quarterback position being what it was in the offseason. I would hate to see Pierce dive on that sword after 1 year. And you're also in a league or a division, you got Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, and Sean Payton. So who are you going to bring in? If you're going to get rid of Pierce, who's out there that's going to bring in and fix it? Maybe our new minority owner has an idea. I don't know, but I don't think the franchise, it starts at the top. Stability, continuity. Mark Davis has had none of that during any of his time since taking over for his dad. At some point, you have to get that. And I don't know if Pierce is the right call, but I also don't think just getting rid of a guy after a year and a half is right either. So we'll see. The one thing I can say is the Raiders are still playing hard. That means something. Hopefully that means they're still playing for the coach, and they're all obviously playing for their contracts and their own professional careers. So college, hey, look, we made a bowl game. That was the bare minimum this year. And, yeah, we achieved the bare minimum, but we still achieved it. So good for the Huskers. Emmett Johnson had announced he was entering the portal last week, and then he came back a couple days later and said he was staying. That's good. We're losing a lot of beef on defensive top 7, the front 7, but if Dylan Raiola's back, Emmett Johnson's back, get some continuity, get a full year of an actual offensive coordinator who knows what he's doing. Dana Holgerston is much better at his job than Marcus Satterfield was, who was just terrible. So the Huskers, I'm going to call it a successful year. As Coach Rule said when they beat Wisconsin and got to 6-6, this is the last time we celebrate getting 6 wins. But you know what? We're going to celebrate it because we got that extra, not just getting the bowl game, but get the practices and all that goes with it. And that matters over time. You get the extra time on the field to assess the talent. And the transfer portal opening, you give some guys a look and see what happens. So better days are coming for the Huskers. And I still have a schedule for next year, and it's a very winnable schedule. So on that note, before we let you go, just a reminder, my books and publication through the great people at Saratoga Springs Publishing Company, Dear Liam and Noah, Letters from Daddy, and also The Three Bulls, my first children's book with my 2 boys being featured in it along with their fictitious friend Darius, all available on Amazon. Have yourself a look. So that said, have a wonderful day, everybody. Hopefully we'll get back to you real soon. If we don't talk to you before Christmas, have a Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy Hanukkah, and have a great holiday season, everybody, no matter how you celebrate.